The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the old, abandoned house at the edge of town. Its windows were shattered, the paint peeling away like curled paper, and a heavy silence hung thick in the air. It was the perfect place for a first EVP experiment, or so they thought. Inside, the floorboards creaked underfoot as the investigator set up the vintage EVP recorder on a dusty wooden table in the center of the living room. The walls, scarred by time and neglect, seemed to close in as the fading light struggled to reach the far corners. Outside, the wind whispered through broken panes, carrying with it an unsettling chill. For the first several minutes, all that filled the room was static, white noise crackling through the headphones like distant thunder. Occasional faint sounds drifted through, a soft creak here, a faint murmur there, nothing clear enough to make sense of. The silence felt heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Then, just as the investigator asked, "Is anyone here with me?" the recorder emitted a sudden, crisp response. "Help, me." The words were faint but unmistakable, slicing through the static like a knife. The room seemed to grow colder. The voice wasn't angry or threatening, but desperate, filled with sorrow and longing. Heart pounding, the investigator asked again, "Who are you?" After a tense pause, the reply came, "Eleanor, trapped." The name hung in the air like a secret whispered from beyond. No one in town spoke of Eleanor. The investigator's mind raced, trapped where? And why? Encouraged yet unsettled, the questions continued. Each response revealed fragments of a tragic story, a woman named Eleanor, wronged and forgotten, whose spirit remained bound to the house. A betrayal long hidden, a life cut short, and a plea for peace that echoed across decades. As the EVP recorder captured each chilling word, the investigator felt the weight of history pressed down. This was no ordinary haunting. It was a sorrowful cry from a past that refused to fade. When the session ended, the recorder held more than just voices, it held a story, whispered from the other side, waiting to be told. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, its steady rhythm the only sound in the dimly lit room. Shadows stretched long across the worn carpet, flickering slightly in the pale glow of a single desk lamp. The investigator sat quietly at the kitchen table, setting up the EVP recorder with deliberate care. Tonight wasn't about exploring abandoned houses or haunted ruins. This time, the experiment was happening right at home. Outside, a soft rain tapped against the windowpane, and the house creaked softly as it settled in the cold night air. The familiar surroundings felt strangely foreign under the weight of the silence. The recorder hummed to life, capturing every faint noise, the drip of water from a leaking pipe, the distant rumble of thunder, but no voices yet. "Is there anyone here with me?" the investigator whispered, voice low and steady, eyes fixed on the small device. Minutes passed. Only the static crackle of the machine filled the space, punctuated by the investigator's cautious breathing. Then, abruptly, a voice emerged from the hiss. "Danger, close." The words were faint but urgent, like a sudden chill in the room. The investigator froze, heart pounding. The voice didn't belong to anyone alive. It was thin, wavering, but clear enough to send a shiver down the spine. "Danger, close," it repeated, more insistent this time. A cold knot of unease tightened in the investigator's stomach. The voice seemed to know something, something real. Questions spilled out, hesitant yet desperate. "What danger? What do you mean?" Silence. Then, another message, this time more detailed. "Gas leak, kitchen, leave now." The room felt suffocating. Every instinct screamed to check the kitchen, yet the investigator hesitated, caught between fear and disbelief. Slowly, they rose and moved toward the kitchen, the recorder still running, capturing every moment. The scent was faint, but unmistakable, the sharp tang of natural gas. A faulty stove valve had started leaking, a silent threat that could have exploded without warning. The spirit's warning wasn't just random noise, it was a life-saving message. Heart racing, the investigator opened windows, turned off the stove, and called emergency services. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the house seemed to breathe a little easier. Later, as the recorder replayed the night's chilling conversation, the investigator realized this spirit wasn't there to haunt, it was there to protect. A presence watching over from beyond, warning of dangers unseen. The ghost's message was no longer a mystery. It was a lifeline. The old asylum stood like a forgotten monument, its towering brick walls crumbling and windows long shattered. Vines clawed their way up the sides, and a thick fog curled around the cracked pavement leading to the front doors. For decades, locals had whispered stories of restless spirits and unspeakable horrors locked inside. Tonight, the investigator stepped through those rusted gates, EVP recorder in hand, ready to uncover the asylum's darkest secrets. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, smelling of damp stone and decay. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly through empty hallways lined with peeling paint and rusted metal beds. Shadows danced in the flicker of the flashlight beam, twisting against the cracked walls. The investigator set the recorder on a splintered wooden bench in what once served as the day room, the last known place of some of the asylum's most troubled patients. "Is anyone here with me?" came the tentative question. Static crackled, then silence. Minutes stretched on. Just as the investigator began to doubt, a faint whisper barely audible over the noise floated through the speaker. "My name is Arlen." The name was soft, almost lost in the background hiss. Arlen, no one in the local records or town history had ever heard of such a patient. It was a name that shouldn't exist. "Who are you, Arlen? What happened here?" the investigator pressed. The response came with a chilling clarity: "They lied." Hidden truth, buried. With each word, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the walls themselves leaned closer to listen. The EVP revealed fragments, cruel experiments, secrets covered up by the asylum's administration, and a patient who had suffered unjustly in the darkest wings. The investigator's mind raced. The name Arlen became a key to a hidden chapter erased from all official documents. What was once dismissed as folklore now felt like a warning, a story buried in silence, demanding to be heard. Exploring deeper, the recorder captured more voices, faint, desperate, pleading. They spoke of pain, injustice, and a promise that the truth would one day surface. As the night wore on, the EVP recordings laid bare a haunting tale of forgotten lives and hidden sins. The name Arlen wasn't just a ghostly whisper, it was a symbol of a dark secret waiting to shatter the facade of the asylum forever. Leaving the asylum, the investigator felt a profound shift. This place was more than haunted. It was a graveyard of secrets, and Arlen's voice was the first to break the silence. The old farmhouse stood isolated beneath a brooding sky, its wooden frame weathered by years of storms and silence. No one lived there anymore, but rumors persisted, whispers of a terrible crime buried deep within its walls. Tonight, the investigator returned, EVP recorder in hand, determined to finally uncover the truth hidden in the shadows. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Faded wallpaper peeled away in tatters, revealing glimpses of years long past. The floorboards groaned underfoot as the investigator made their way to the parlor, setting the recorder on an old mantel covered in cobwebs. The only light came from a flickering lantern, casting eerie shadows that danced across the cracked ceiling. "Is anyone here?" the investigator's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. Static filled the room, the recorder picking up nothing but white noise. Then, unexpectedly, a voice emerged, low, desperate, and raw with pain. "They took me." The word sent a shiver down the investigator's spine. "Who took you?" What happened? Silence. Then another whisper, more urgent. Back door, midnight, knife. The investigator's mind raced. The details were hauntingly specific, a crime scene, a time, a method, none of which matched the official police reports from years ago. The victim's voice continued, revealing a name, a hidden place in the house where evidence had been overlooked. Driven by the chilling confession, the investigator began searching the farmhouse more thoroughly. Beneath a loose floorboard behind the fireplace, they uncovered a small, rusted box. Inside were old letters and a blood-stained handkerchief, clues the police had missed, evidence that could reopen the cold case. As the EVP session continued, the spirit's voice pleaded for justice, each word weighted with sorrow and urgency. I was silenced, forgotten, help me. The investigator felt the heavy burden of the ghost's pain, understanding that this wasn't just a haunting, it was a desperate call for truth, a cry from beyond the grave. In the days that followed, the new evidence shook the town, forcing the police to revisit the case. The spirit's message had turned the investigation upside down, revealing dark secrets buried beneath years of neglect. The farmhouse no longer felt abandoned. It was a place where the past demanded to be heard, and justice was finally within reach. The room was dim, bathed only in the soft glow of candlelight flickering against cracked plaster walls. It was the last night of the investigator's long journey into the unknown, a final EVP session with a spirit that had haunted their thoughts for weeks. The air was thick with anticipation, and a heavy stillness settled over the quiet house. The EVP recorder sat on the wooden table, its blinking light the only sign of life amid the darkness. Outside, the wind whispered through bare branches, and the distant hoot of an owl echoed like a mournful song. The investigator, eyes weary but determined, asked softly, "Why have you stayed here all this time?" For a moment, there was only static. Then, a fragile, trembling voice emerged, barely more than a whisper, yet saturated with raw emotion. "I wait, because I love." The words hung in the air, fragile and aching. The investigator leaned in, heart tightening. The voice continued, revealing a story of love lost to tragedy, of promises broken, and a soul unwilling to move on without a final farewell. Left behind, alone, afraid. Each phrase painted a picture of heartbreak, loneliness, and regret. The spirit was not angry or vengeful, but deeply sorrowful, trapped by memories too painful to release. It was a ghost bound by love, waiting for closure, for someone to remember. The investigator's hands trembled as they asked, "Is there anything you want me to know? Anything you want to say before you go?" The response came slowly, the voice cracking with emotion. "Thank you, for listening, now. I can rest." Tears blurred the investigator's vision as the room seemed to soften. The air grew lighter, the oppressive weight lifting. It was as if the spirit, finally understood and heard, was ready to leave the world behind. In that moment, the investigator was left shaken, not just by the spirit's story, but by the profound realization that death might not be an end, but a pause. A space where love lingers, waiting for peace. The EVP recorder clicked off, silence returning to the room. But the memory of that last goodbye, fragile, beautiful, and haunting, would stay forever.